Peter, we're not using that.
What?
No.
You want some more?
You're really fighting
Not
for this.
using
Your
it.
daily, diet.
I just had to cut out a bunch of shit leading up to this intro. Don't worry about it. It's fine. We're going to start this week appropriately with our Twitter roundup. Oh, sorry. Terrible. Like, it's just like such weird, frustrating stories. Twitter, the #1 violator of misinformation. Facebook, close second. And they're only going downhill from here. Let's get into it.
Oh, and please don't forget to subscribe. We love you.
What? All right. Fine. A pair of stories for this week's Twitter roundup. Start the week
A pair
with
of big hairy stories. Big wrinkly hairy
Couple of
stories.
real
with
big stories.
big, giant Elon Musk in the middle.
Ew.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get to the second one because they're related. But basically, the EU warned Musk that they have to comply with rules about misinformation, despite the fact that he withdrew from the agreements that they have, because a recent study found that Twitter is the worst social media platform for misinformation, followed by Facebook, and then TikTok was the third. So huge amounts of misinformation on the platform.
Surprised.
The real problem is he's dragging everyone down with him. So a story from the Washington Post talks about how all of big tech is following Elon's lead. Down the drain.
We're basically just shafted.
Are we regressing? I feel like we're fucking going backwards. You know?
Yeah.
And that's
like
really the point of this article is they talk about how so I'll just read a couple of sections from the Washington Post article. Social media companies are receding from their role as watchdogs against political misinformation, abandoning their most aggressive efforts to police online falsehoods in a trend expected to profoundly affect the 2024 presidential election. Mass layoffs at Meta and other major tech companies have gutted teams dedicated to promoting accurate information online. Musk recently reset industry standards, rolling back strict rules against information. Meta had briefly considered a plan last year to ban all political advertising on Facebook, but shelved it after Musk announced plans to transform the rival network Twitter into a haven of free speech. YouTube, Twitter, and Meta have stopped labeling or removing posts that repeat Trump's lies, even as voters increasingly get their news on social media. So, good news, everybody.
Yeah, the problem is that copycatting happens, right? In industries, like company sees another company doing something, and sometimes they're copying things that should definitely not be copied for the sake of resources. So they get to save money because they fucking axed their entire disinformation team that sits there. And this is a terrible job to have, by the way. Like, they have to sift through all the shit that people post. So we're talking about like child exploitative like videos and like imagery, disinformation, terrorist attacks, like all these types of terrible things they have to sit through. And like, that's a terrible job to have. These guys are super underpaid. There's some articles about this, like where they did exposés on these poor contractors that have to sit through and sift through this data.
Just imagine all the shit that actually makes it into your feed.
Right.
Everything they see is worse than that.
Yeah. No, really. Yeah. And now, I mean, I guess good that they don't have to do that anymore, but also like, wow, what a fucking terrible scenario. It's just a really bad situation.
Wait, hang on. That's the silver lining, is it? That
they don't have to
do the job anymore.
That's literally the silver lining.
That's
So instead, all of you watching and us have to just see it instead.
They kind of talk about that again in the article. Employees, previously, Meta's employees have been encouraged to seek out the thorniest problems on the platform, like fraud, abuse, bias, and attempts at voter suppression. Now they're asked to spend most of their time figuring out how to minimally comply with a booming list of global regulations.
Wow.
Perfect.
Well, hopefully the global regulations will get stronger. That's all I can say. I mean, there's some things coming up in the EU that is going to force. They are about disinformation. So one of the reason that the EU came up with this warning for Twitter is that if Twitter doesn't solve the problem and it continues to act like this, then at some point they're going to get in proper trouble and Twitter will get banned. Twitter X, whatever. Oh, God, still angers me weeks later that it's called X or whatever. So that's a good thing. That is an actual silver lining, I think. That the regulation is getting to the point. It always takes years for things to actually start happening. So we're gonna have to be patient, but it's moving in the right direction, and it's much harder to undo these laws than it is to get to put them in place. Actually, I don't know. I've never seen them undone, really. But now they're here.
Yeah.
Hopefully, like GDPR fines are going up and up. So probably the same stuff is going to happen for misinformation.
There has to be a counteracting force. Like I think John framed it as copying. I don't know if I'd call it copying so much as maybe like giving them permission. Twitter gave the leadership to stop doing this. And then everybody else is like, oh, thank God we don't have to do it anymore. And starts doing this.
Yeah.
It's
true. It's like Trump. It's like Trump himself. He kind of gave politicians. He's like, "Hey, look, you can do this and get away with it.
You can get away with it."
Yeah.
And everyone's possibly. Like, oh, cool. We'll see what happens by next year. I think we're gonna have some answers by next year. We'll see if you really can get away with it, and that should give you kind of an answer of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't parrot that behavior. Maybe we shouldn't be total dickheads.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
So that's it.